Flight attendants and pilots of Reddit, what are some things that happen mid-flight that only the crew are aware of? My uncle was a pilot. He says that most people don't understand how much of the airplane is run by computers. The pilots are necessary, but a lot of the element of flying are automated nowadays. Not a flight attendant or a pilot, but I discovered there is such a thing as airhead when I saw one of the flight attendants giving a blowjob to one of the pilots mid-flight. Now, the thing to keep in mind was this was before 9/11, when the cockpit wasn't kept so securely locked. There was a bit of a bug spreading around the plane, which I was asked to take care of, since I was the only doctor on board. I made my way to the cockpit to inform the pilot of the condition of the passengers, and as soon as I open the door, I see the flight attendant bent over with her head in the pilot's lap. There's a special frequency called guard that all aircraft are supposed to monitor. It's for emergencies, or for when an aircraft ends up on a wrong frequency and the controllers need to get contact with them to change them to the right frequency. It's full of pilots meowing at each other, and people accidentally asking for gate assignments, and making other radio calls. Pilot here. We only get paid when the doors are closed, and the pushback has commenced. If we are delayed, or sitting with the door open, we are just as annoyed as you are. At altitude we are constantly in contact with air traffic control and change to different center frequencies, or control for other than US locations. We are also doing fuel checks to make sure the fuel burn isn't abnormal, dodging weather, and probably bitching about scheduling. Pilots are on their phones or reading the newspaper all the time. One split second of instinct combined with piloting skill decides if you land on the runway or on the side of it. Most of the runways are 45 meters wide, and on a gusty summer afternoon, or during thunderstorms I take God's name more than Pope himself. 2. A smooth landing is not necessarily a good landing. One can make a smooth landing, and it will feel good for passengers, but it could be a risky landing if the pilot decides to use extra runway. Never shout at your pilot for a bad landing, unless he crash lands. And if he crash lands and you can shout at him, understand that you are alive because of him. Pilot here. Late to the party as usual. But sometimes the passengers may be having a nice quiet flight in the back, while the pilots are up front dodging thunderstorms and yelling their heads off. We will not only transport dead bodies, but also live transplants, like hearts and lungs. I particularly like the live transplants, because we get to cut to the front of the line for takeoff, and we get all the shortcuts to our destination. Tip for those who get motion sickness, try not to move your head around. Pilots move their eyes instead of their heads to look at the instruments in the flight deck. Also try to sit in a seat over the wing. This area of the plane doesn't rotate as much during climbs and descents. Flight attendants can't do pilot's job, but also pilots can't do flight attendants' jobs for sure. We aren't hired for our people skills. Don't take off your shoes to go to the bathroom. People pee on the floor all the time. Pilot here. Most of the time the passengers are not given the full answer on why a flight is delayed or cancelled. Airlines will typically blame cancellations on unrelated events, such as weather, instead of mechanical issues, so they don't have to pay for hotel rooms/meals etc. Also, chemtrails are not real. For those of you who believe they are real, give your head a shake. This started off with us blissfully unaware, ended with mild pants shitting. I was flying to France in one of those planes with the TV screen up front to show the flight path and where you currently are. I was just about to fall asleep when the captain asked over the PA if there was a doctor on board and if they could go to seat number something. I knew this was bad. The flight path changed to Canada and we had to make an emergency landing. We were stuck there for 2 hours. When we finally got to France, his entire row was quarantined off. I have no idea what the fuck happened. Flight attendants don't get paid on the ground. Only flying hours are paid. We are slave labor on the ground and duties are continually added to our unpaid work time because the company knows they don't have to pay us. We show up 2 to 3 hours before we even start getting paid, and some days we will work up to 14 hours and only get paid for 5 or 6 of those hours. It should be illegal. Please be kind when you are boarding the airplane and getting all pissy about your bags etc. The flight attendant is a volunteer. While she is helping you on the ground, she is essentially doing you a favor. I worked with a pilot that was really old. He couldn't stay awake in flight. The first officer kept having to poke him and wake him up. We kept feeding him black coffee but it didn't help much. I asked him if he was retiring soon, but he said he couldn't afford it because our airline has no pension program and the pay scale is pathetic. Pretty scary. One of my all-time favorites is the captain accidentally broadcasting his passenger briefing, welcome aboard, weather in Chicago and so on frequency instead of the aircraft PA system, blocking up ground, ramp, tower, etc. for a solid 15 seconds. You automatically become the laughing stock of the airport. We sat in a backed up queue for hours in Denver one time. The weather had the airport socked in. Nobody was going anywhere until this giant supercell cleared the end of the runway. During that time, suddenly there had appeared a mechanic at the front of the cabin on the PA, holding up a 2-foot long piece of metal he had pulled from one of the tires. He explained if the plane hadn't been sitting waiting he might have never spotted it. It could have come flying out during takeoff roll and penetrated the plane's wing, igniting fuel, or whatever. Everyone cheered him. What a hero. He possibly saved our lives. To this day I have no idea why they let him come on board and tell us this. Ex-airline employee here. Often we'd have someone on board with terrible body odor. You can set the temperature in one end of the cabin hotter and it localizes the smell to one part of the plane. If you see coffee filter bags hanging anywhere, it's because someone smells like open ass somewhere on the plane. Flight attendants often talk about the hot guy in 23B or whatever seat he's in. Pilots fuck around a lot up front. They'll take pictures, post on Facebook, watch movies. Automation has taken over a lot of the work on long flights. Flight attendant here, crop dusting. Basically farting whilst we walk down the aisle due to the bloating. If you fly frequently there's a high chance a flight attendant has farted right by your head as they walk down the aisle. There's a 600-page book in the cockpit with every single thing that can possibly go wrong, from a bulb going out to an engine falling off, a biohazard or a bomb threat. As an airline agent, I can't even tell you how often the crew is hungover. More often than not. Also the flight attendants use their personal phone/Wi-Fi in flight but that's probably not very surprising. Don't fly with an ear infection or fluid in your ears. There is a chance you can rupture your eardrum. Flight crews are especially susceptible to this, since we are constantly going through pressurization and depressurization when we work. Former flight attendant here. Landing gear got stuck on descent. We flew in circles for ages just waiting to see/find out if we needed to crash land or not. Luckily the gear eventually came down. Passengers never knew something was wrong. One time, I accidentally spilled coffee creamer on a bald dude's head while he was sleeping during service. Myself and everyone around him silently agreed to say nothing. He looked as if a bird pooped on his head. I still feel guilty about it. Never drink the coffee. I have never seen those machines cleaned. My boyfriend is a pilot on a Phenom 300. People that fly in his jet are constantly having sex. They drink and have raunchy sex while him and his captain have to sit there and listen because it's only a curtain and not a door. They leave used condoms and cum stains all the time. He is the unlucky one that has to Clorox wipe it all off when they get out. Also when his passengers are annoying and drinking, he will decrease the cabin pressure, so the alcohol hits them much harder and they go to sleep. Flight attendant here. Depending on airline policy, the crew gets to sleep on full flat beds on long flights. We prefer you return your trays the way we gave it to you. Sometimes the passengers think stacking them will be helpful but it's not. Also, female flight attendants are used to getting hit on by passengers. And some of my colleagues end up being married to a passenger, so it is possible to find love in flight. Thanks for watching the video. For more content like this, please subscribe, like, and share the video and push the notification button.